Hello. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to the second annual PBN Small Business Growth Expo and Seminar presented by Hawaiian Telcom. My name is Spiro Constantine. I'm the Business Marketing Manager for Hawaiian Telcom, and I want to thank you for coming today to the seminar. This is our second seminar today. I hope you were able to attend the earlier seminar on security and the cloud. Today, we're very fortunate to have one of Hawaii's most well-known social media marketing mavens. She is the owner and co-founder and founder of Akamai Marketing. She lives out in Hawaii Kai, but she does business all over the state of Hawaii. Her list of clients include businesses, politicians, and then a lot of companies that are even on the mainland. We've had a long-standing relationship with her as far as social media marketing, and we're very happy to have Tara Coomans today. She's a recent proud parent of a new puppy, so she may look like she may not have gotten enough sleep last night, but that's okay, because she's all together here today. So we're very pleased. We also are going to have a drawing for a $100 Visa gift card at the end of today's seminar. Everyone's a winner that attends our seminars because we also validate your parking. We will do that at the table at the back of the room after the seminar. Okay, so let's get started. And here is Tara Coomans.
Thank you. That was a really nice introduction, Spiro. I'm kind of embarrassed. I didn't put any puppy pictures into my presentation today, and now I really wish I would have, because, of course, I think she's adorable. You know, I'm one of those people on social media. Look, another picture of my dog. That's me. Okay, so I wanted to start by thanking you for joining me today. We are going to talk about social media in a slightly different context today. So after we're finished, I was having some conversations earlier before we got started, and I know that there's probably a lot of questions. So after we're finished, I really encourage you to go ahead and ask some questions, whether they apply to what we're going to talk about today specifically or not. If you have any social media questions, it's totally open Q&A, because this is your time, and I really want to make it worth it for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit today about captivation motivations. There are actually 7 triggers that cause people to take action, and they're particularly relevant in social media because, especially as a small business owner, if you are going to spend any time in social media, you want to make it click. You want people to be responsive. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today, I know that you have seen already. But when you understand the why these things are working, you can better apply them and decide how it is that you're going to spend your time in social media. So the thing to understand about captivation motivation is that it's biological. Okay? It's an inherent structure that all of us have, and I'll talk about that just a little bit more in a few minutes. But the reason that's really cool is that it provides you with a great structure from which to framework your social media, all of your marketing actually, and it also works online and offline. So what that means is it can influence your persuasion, your leadership, your sales, all your business operations. So these are really powerful tools. We're going to talk about 4 of them. There's actually 7. We're going to talk about 4 of them today. And I picked them because I think they're the most accessible to small business owners. Okay? I want you to understand something else about the captivation motivations. I did not make them up. I did not even discover them. I simply put them into a context in which I thought that business owners like yourself or other marketers could understand them a little bit better. So a lot of people ask me where captivation motivation came from. And the other thing to understand about them is that they all reside in the biggest part of our brain, what I call the other 95%. So the other 95% developed in kind of an interesting time. Just take it back just a minute and think about the caveman days. There was a guy who every morning when he woke up, he was surrounded by uncertainty. He didn't know where he was going to get his next meal from. He didn't know whether he was going to be able to keep his family safe or not. He didn't know if he was ever going to run into other people like himself or similar to himself. He wrote stories and painted pictures on the walls so that he could tell his story for the next people that came along. but he grew up in a place and lived in a time where uncertainty was the dominant force in his environment. That's the environment in which the largest part of our brain evolved. So all of the captivation motivations evolved during that exact time. These motivations happen in the oldest part of our brain. They're the most heavily used. They are automatic to us. We actually are usually not even aware of them. In fact, a lot of time, the analytical portion of our brain, the 5%, which we like to think of as the most dominant part of our brain, and I'll tell you a little bit later why it's not, but the 5% likes to tell us that these things aren't actually happening. So whenever you catch yourself during this presentation thinking, well, that doesn't seem right, I'm going to give you a couple of examples today, and I want you to go back to some of those, because all of these things developed and continue to develop in the world that we lived in a long time ago. So let's go ahead and get started. That captivation motivations are our strongest urges. So I'm going to start with an exercise. How's that look to you guys? Yeah, I know, I love cupcakes. Okay, so the reason I like to use a cupcake as part of my presentation is, one, I think that marketing is a lot like baking. If you've ever tried to bake, you know that baking is part art and part science. I am a horrific baker. I am, however, a big fan of marketing and happen to be okay at it. But in my mind, in the cupcake is the science, the baking of the cupcake is the science, and the frosting is the art. The interesting thing about food images in social media is they tap into the captivation motivations. Okay? And that's why your feeds, I don't care what kind of social media you use, you see food pictures all over the place. You can use food pictures in your images even if you're not a restaurant, even if you're not a baker. And I go ahead and encourage you to do that. But here's our exercise. I want you to write this down. I want you to close your eyes for just a minute. I want you to think about your favorite cupcake. I want you to think about, who were you with the last time you had that cupcake? What were you celebrating? Do you remember how happy you were at that time? Okay, open your eyes. Want to buy a cupcake? Raise your hand if you're thinking about buying a cupcake. Okay. That's what I thought. Now let me tell you about this particular cupcake. This particular cupcake is obviously very special. It's a red velvet cupcake. It was made with minimally refined sugar, which means the sugar is sweeter and more natural tasting. The eggs used in this batter came from chickens fed all natural food and completely hormone-free. The frosting was made with 100% whipped cream and hand-whipped. Very carefully put on top of that with tiny little sprinkles. Want to buy a cupcake? Okay. The difference between the two experiences you just had were that the very first experience was about you. The very first experience that you had was your captivation motivation. When we talk about features and benefits to our customers in social media, the brain hears it like this. The 95% of the brain, the captivation motivation part of the brain, it hears it like this. Wah, 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 wah. Especially if you start with, here's about the sugar, here's about the eggs. But if you start with, what does a cupcake mean to you? Why do you like cupcakes? If you start in that place, and then you move into your features and benefits, now you have a conversation going. So social media is the place to start the conversation about the other person, about the reader, about you, okay? That's the thing that you really have to remember about social media. And this is one of those things that I was saying about it's counterintuitive. You know, I was raised as a traditional marketer. I'm just old enough to have gone through the school of features and benefits, okay? And when I first started learning and experimenting and researching the captivation motivations, one of the things that I kept thinking was, no, that's just wrong. You have to have a call to action in everything you do. Otherwise, how will people know what to do? But as it turns out, particularly in social media, you really have to give people a chance to experience it for themselves. It's different from other mediums in that way. So when you think about social media, think about how you make it about your customer. How are you going to give them a chance to self-identify with your brand, your product, the experience of using both of those things? It's a very difficult shift to make these two shifts. But if you are able to do this, let me tell you the difference it makes for you. While your competitors are marketing, you're connecting. Which would you rather do? If you were in the last presentation, you heard the gentleman say, it's not about technology, it's about the people, right? Social media is exactly like that. It doesn't matter what platform you use. Your customers are the same people as the people that walk in your front doors. They're the same people on the other side of that screen. Who are they? Visualize them. Think about who they are. Who do you want them to be? That's the people you should be talking to in social media. You're going to have to get to know them just a little bit. But when you understand the secrets to captivation motivations, then it leads to increased sales. It leads to more efficient social media use. And frankly, it leads to happier and more loyal customers. Who wants that? Is anybody interested in happier and more loyal customers? Yeah, okay. Anybody interested in customers that spend more faster? Okay. So that's the illustration I wanted to show you about captivation motivations, and then I'm just going to go through a couple of quick ground rules about using them, and then we'll get right into it, I promise. So before I finish this statement about the 5% of the brain, I wanted to go back to and ask you, what happens when you make a decision? What happens when you are deciding between two products? How are you deciding which you're going to do? I want you to think about that for just 1 second and write down maybe the process that you think about when you're buying, let's just say something easy like cereal. You're standing in front of the cereal aisle. You're looking, do I buy Cheerios? Do I buy Frosted Flakes? Do I buy Fruity Pebbles? Which one am I going to buy? Okay. Now, here's what happens when you make a decision. Okay? Researchers know that the analytical part of the brain is only 5% of the brain. Okay? When you think about how powerful the 5% of the brain, that analytical portion of our brain, really is, you begin to sort of maybe begin to conceptualize how powerful the other 95% is. Okay? But the thing is, with the 5%, we have to call on that. We have to ask it to be present. We have to bring it to the forefront. The 95% of the brain is working all of the time. So here's what happens when you're making a choice. You're looking at your two options. You're maybe just thinking about the two options. And you think your 5% is fully engaged. But your 95% is making choices for you that your 5% is just going to justify on your behalf. That's the truth. So when you think your 5% of your brain is working, it's really your 95% of the brain. The truth is that we sometimes, in fact, almost always make decisions and we don't know why. Think about that just one more time in the context of social media. Think about how fast-moving social media is. Think about how important it is to immediately grab attention to the person reading or seeing or viewing that information. It needs to trigger through the 95%. Even when we think we're being analytical, it's really our other 95% dominating for that. Think about it for just a minute and ask yourself, how impressive is 5% control? If you only had 5% control of your business, would you be satisfied? Probably not. I mean, I know I wouldn't. If you only had 5% control of your employees' time, would you be satisfied? Then why would you be satisfied with only 5% control of your marketing? It's a great question, right? You shouldn't. There's another reason for you to think about this in a different way. Because 5% of our brain is the newest, it's the smallest, and it's going to take us the longest part to evolve. The 95% has been evolving for thousands of years. So don't talk about your features, your benefits, and your pricing on the front end, because that's when the 95% says, what? Wah, 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 wah. The 5% of the brain doesn't need to be engaged until the final portion, until we're actually at the buying stage. 95% engaged on the front end, 5% engaged on the back end. Okay? The next piece that you need to really understand is that, again, going back to the people aspect, we want to talk in social media like people. We want our brands to have voices, I'm sure you've heard this before, similar to people. People do not have features and benefits. Except for me, of course, Spiro. I live in Hawaii Kai, I have a dog. But people do not have features and benefits. I don't introduce myself by saying, hi, my name is Tara Coomans. I have blonde hair and I'm 5'1". I weigh amount of pounds I'm not going to tell you. We don't talk like that to one another. Why do we talk like that to our customers in social media? Because it's hard to get into the groove. We have this distance between us. This is why we have to remember to go ahead and think and be purposeful in our marketing and social media. The oldest part of the brain doesn't want to hear your features and benefits. This is another reason why. How many of you have ever tried to do customer surveys? I have. Yeah. They're not easy. And this is polling, too. If you're paying attention to the political scene right now, there's been a lot of discussion about accuracy of polls. The reason that surveys and polls are so difficult to do is because when people ask a question, their 5% of the brain is answering. When people make an action, then 95% of the brain is triggering. That's why, if you ask me, how much would you like to pay for this widget? I will tell you one thing and then go an entirely different route when I actually buy the widget. It's confusing and it's difficult. But if you're using social media and you're engaging in that 95% of the brain, you're going to learn a lot of things about your customers. You're going to get a lot of customer feedback that it's going to prevent you from having to really do surveys. You're just going to know exactly who your customer is. You're going to know exactly what they want, and you're going to know who you want your ideal customer to be. You're going to have opportunities if you're engaging in the 95% that you wouldn't have already had. We already talked about this just a little bit. It's not about you. It's about me. The other thing that you need to understand about this is that in everything you do, I want you to ask yourself, if I was reading this, would I care? If the answer is no, or the answer is, well, maybe, the answer is no. You need to move forward into making it about the customer. Why should they care? Why is it relevant? What's the experience about? You know, Apple doesn't sell computers. They make my life easier. Right? So there's a difference between why do I buy a computer? Not so I can carry a brick around. I buy a computer so I can be more efficient, faster, more immediate, more responsive in my life and to my clients. That's why I buy a computer. Maybe I buy a computer because I want to do videos and I want to capture every moment of my life. Maybe that's why I buy a computer. So I want you to think about the fact that when we buy, we don't buy because of prices, features, and benefits. We buy because of the way it matters to, the way it makes us feel. The last thing to understand, and we talked about this just a little bit, 95% of the brain has a job to do. It is always on high alert. If you think about the caveman days, that guy probably didn't really sleep real well. I bet you sleep better, even as a small business owner, than that guy did. He was sort of worried about the saber-toothed tiger, something you actually don't have to worry about. You have big worries, I'm sure, but you don't have to worry about your food. You don't have to worry about your shelter. You don't have to worry about being eaten alive. Nonetheless, your 95% is always on. Do you like that? Not always on? Yeah. 95% is always on. Even when how many of you either use your iPad or your phone while you're watching TV? You do, yeah, you're a two-screen user. So you're doing this, you're looking, and you stop on something. That's your 95%. It's working. You don't know why you stopped, do you? Something captured your attention. Maybe it was the person, maybe it was the picture, but you don't really actually, the 5% doesn't really actually tell you why you stopped, but you did. That's the trigger you're looking for. That's why you need it. 95% is fast, it's instantaneous, and it's passion. The 5%, slow, plodding, and indifferent. What kind of customer do you want? I know what kind of customer I want. I'm ready. I'm ready to get them going. All right, so the first captivation motivation are the tribes. I bet you probably are aware of this concept. The concept that we like to be with people. We like to feel safe. We like to have certainty. And if you go back to the evolutionary standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. There was a lot of reason for the early caveman to hang out together. Safety, order, certainty. So for us, for the 95%, tribes equal trust. Now, how do we... A great example of tribes today is, have you ever been at an event and been the first to clap? Yeah, oh, I hate that. And then you keep clapping. and then you have to stop because, you have to stop because no one else is clapping. Okay, social media is a lot like that, isn't it? The louder the clap, the more clapping you get. You probably had that experience. But that clapping is that physical manifestation that you have to stop clapping. That's how strong the tribal urge is. The reason you stop clapping is because the people around you aren't doing the same thing. You think it's because you feel embarrassed because you're the only one clapping. It's actually because the people around you aren't doing the same thing. Social media is built on this concept. This is the reason social media exists, because we want to hang out with people who are like us. So the way to inspire the tribal captivation motivation, there's really 3 key ways. Social validation. Social validation can be things like testimonials, right? They can be things like user stories. They can be things, even user information, how many people are using it. Even likes and followers serve as social validation. They tell everyone else that there's someone else who thinks this is relevant, right? Recommendations, all those things. That's why they're relevant. Because people do actually need to see those things. Even when they make you want to pull your hair out of your head, people actually do need to see those things. So so resist the urge to ignore that piece, because even though I know it's hard sometimes for business owners, it's an important piece. When you think about testimonials too, I want you to think about the way that you might have a testimonial on social media. I'm going to show you one example in just a minute, but the way you might have testimonials on social media might be a little different than you would on your website. But I want you to be really careful and think very clearly about who it is you're trying to attract, because the truth of the matter is the reason that testimonials work is that the person reading them responds to the person giving it. So we have to think about how is the person speaking on behalf of my company? Who are they speaking to? And is the person who's reading that inspired because they want to be like that person, or because they see themselves as that person? I'm going to talk about that in just another minute too, the self-identification piece. So testimonials, don't be careless with those things, because if you do them right and you really think about who you're trying to attract with each testimonial, then it will actually get you the better, more ideal customer if that's the person that you've targeted. Self-identification. Ultimately, we respond to things that validate the way we see ourselves, or we respond to things that validate the way we want to see ourselves. Your company probably markets to one of those types of people. Okay? If you're a luxury product, you probably market to the way I want to see myself. Every person has these 2 different people in them. Right? And by the way that we see ourselves, or the way we want to see ourselves, has nothing to do with the way the rest of the world sees us. I might think I'm pretty smart. The rest of the world might not think that, but it doesn't matter. If I think I'm smart and you as a company tell me I'm smart, oh, I'm in. I'm in. Only smart people use my products. Well, that's me. I obviously should be using the products that smart people use, right? So think about how you can utilize something like that with your customer. And the other way to inspire that tribal captivation motivations is recognition. Recognition on social media, super easy. Used to be a little harder to make your customers feel like they were part of the bigger picture. Used to be a little harder to recognize them. Now, if your customer comments, shares, asks questions, you can recognize them. If they say something nice, you can recognize them. You don't have to say thanks to recognize them. You can just say, hey, thanks for commenting. That's a form of recommendation. But even in social media, and I'll show you some examples. Let's get into the examples. In social media, you have even more opportunities to do that. All right, this is a video by a small company, believe it or not, on YouTube. They ran a promo with this.
Every year you spend 2,920 hours sleeping, 134 hours eating pizza, 52 hours eating chips, 110 hours eating kebabs, and 262 hours working it off. You spend 173 hours waiting for public transport and 571 hours riding public transport, 97 hours waiting for downloads, 548 hours of LOLing, OMGing, and WTFing. You spend 192 hours in traffic, 109 hours in the shower, 1,840 hours at work, which doesn't leave you with much time left. It's time to start living. One life, one shot, so make it count. No regrets.
No regrets. The type of person that wants to travel with this type of company is a person that wants to see themselves as living every minute to the fullest. No regrets. Also, someone young. Right off the bat, we know exactly who this person is, and they see themselves. And more importantly, they see their friends. They immediately identify and say, I know I can trust this company because they get me. They understand what I'm all about. They know when I travel with my friends. I don't want to go with my mom and my dad. I don't want to go on a tour bus. I want to jump off a boat in the middle of some crazy lagoon. Okay? These guys, the reason this worked, and this was a fairly well-developed video, I agree, but the reason this worked is because the very first half of the commercial was about who? Me. Not a single feature or benefit. Not a single mention of pricing, even though this company actually does discount travel for young people. Everything was about me. Not me, really. I'm a little old for that, but that's all right. But you understand where I'm going with this, okay? And we understand exactly who that person is, and they see themselves immediately. It's also a great example of storytelling, but we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But I also like to point out, by the time we got to the travel part, we were already fully engaged. Social validation. I just wanted to tell you this story. A couple of years ago, I was approached by the UN and NCR to be a blogger for this Blue Key campaign that they were running to raise awareness for refugees throughout the world. Sort of an interesting thing to try and raise refugee awareness in the richest country in the world. Let me tell you, it's pretty tough. We are so far removed from that experience. I was one of 258 people in the country that was asked to participate in it. They made sure that they told me that. They made sure that they let me know that the reason that they picked me was because they felt I could help them influence a larger audience. And also they knew that I had supported other nonprofit organizations, so they knew that things like this were important to me. That was their pitch to me. I'm in, okay? I'm not going to say no to a nonprofit who's trying to do good things, who wants to raise awareness. So for a couple of weeks, about 200 of us, 258 of us, spent a lot of time on social media, sharing some key messages that they had written for us, or we could write our own. We put this badge on our blogs. We wrote blogs. We did videos. And then we also had a little avatar that we put on our Twitter faces and our pictures, right? So everywhere we went, people were asking us on social media, everywhere we went, people were asking us about it. We felt like we were sort of kind of special. It was kind of nice. Other people felt, wow, if these people are into this, I wonder what it is. So the social validation piece on this influencer campaign, okay, was so interesting because they knew they had to socially validate both the people who were going to volunteer their time to do this program, as well as volunteer their time to go ahead and convince other people to buy this little blue key for $5. At the end of it, we held a tweet-a-thon. I think there was 1,500 tweets during that time, and about 50% of the purchases were made during that time. So overall, we considered it a fairly good success. But again, I think the social validation piece in this was not so much about the validation of the audience, but the way that they made the bloggers feel when they approached them, okay? And you hear a lot about using bloggers or influencers in social media. So think really quickly about why it is that those people would do that. Think really quickly, not that you have to, I didn't get anything for this. In fact, I had to buy my own blue key. I used my own time, I used my own energy, and I was happy to do it. But I didn't get anything for it. They just knew how to trip my triggers. They knew exactly who I was, and they knew how to get into my captivation motivations. So if you think about using these kinds of programs where you're using influencers, think about how you can inspire the influencers and then how you can inspire the influencers to inspire others. This campaign was 100% captivation, motivation, tribal. I mean, 100%. I like this example of social validation as well. This is a small company, and they just, they do banter back and forth with their customers. Now, that's their brand. That may not be consistent with your brand, but there are ways for you to communicate in social media that is consistent with your brand. And I love this quote, "We speak the language of our customers." All you have to do to speak the language of your customers is make them feel included. Make them feel like they're part of the show. Make them feel like it's all about them. People love to feel recognized. People love to feel special. That's all this is. You've probably seen this 100 times. You probably asked yourself, do I have time to do this? I know I struggle with that too. I guess the question is, do you have time not to? You don't have to do it with every single person. You don't have to do it every single time. But do you have the time to ignore your customers? Sort of like not answering the phone. And I know nobody believes in that. So this is about validation. This is about recognition. And the other thing that happens in this kind of validation is, who else sees this? Everyone else. They all see that you're taking the time to communicate with your customers. So that's another form of social validation. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Unlike the phone call. This is a picture of, it's hard to see, I think. It's a picture of an adorable mommy with her adorable fat-faced baby. This is a body shop outside of Minneapolis, and their Facebook fans are 60% women. Whoa. First of all, think about it for a minute. How hard is it for a body shop to get 1,300 Facebook fans? That's number one. Second is, how hard is it to get women to like a body shop? But they know exactly who their audience is. The owner of the company knows exactly that people buy from people. And he wants to reinforce the fact that it's ladies and women, moms, more importantly, right? People who have very precious cargo coming into his store. This is a testimonial. This is it. That's it. No big, long, 500 words, got to interview, edit, write copy. This is it. This serves as a testimonial. Who are you looking to reach? How often are they the star of your social media presence? How often do you get to turn around and make them feel special for just a minute? That's it. And then they had a little banter back and forth. Looks like he saw the bill before Mom did. I think that was kind of cute. And what do? They don't get mad. They say, ha, 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 that's funny. That's a great caption, right? So this works in there's a lot of different captivation motivations going on here. But the biggest one that I see is recognition, which is a tribal captivation motivation. I also like this example because it's culturally consistent with his customers. Now, if you're looking to reach other types of customers, let's say he was looking to reach college-age boys. This would not be the picture. But you could use them side by side. You don't have to pick one and only do one. Tomorrow, just use the guy that drove up on his bike, on his motorcycle, right? The cool guy with his helmet. Yeah. You know that guy? Use that guy. You can use him tomorrow. It's okay. You can have multiple stories, multiple customers, multiple things going on, but just make sure that you think about who they are and what kind of lives they have. You're telling the story about their lives. You're not telling the story about your product. Storytelling. So remember I said that you have two jobs. You want to reinforce the way people see themselves, or you want to reinforce the way people want to see themselves. No yawning. Storytelling is your best friend. Now, I think a lot of people think, and I was having a conversation before we got started, and we were talking about some of the challenges of building content. I think a lot of people think that a story has to be some big, long continuum. That picture that we just saw a minute ago was a story. And I'll show you another one in just a second. So stories don't have to be long. They don't have to have a big, long plot. We don't have to worry about whether we're gifted storytellers or not. We just have to go back to who's the reader, how are they going to experience this? The thing that you have to understand about storytelling is that when we see stories or hear stories, multiple parts of our brain are clicking. We're engaging multiple pieces, okay? And because we're engaging multiple pieces, it's more memorable. When we see stories, well-told stories, particularly on video, it's one reason why video is such a great tool. But when we see stories and we're really drawn into it, we actually experience it. The brain actually experiences it the way as if we're experiencing it ourselves. Ever been to a horror movie and jumped straight out of your seat? That's your 95%. That's empathy. That's storytelling. Now, you don't necessarily want people jumping out of their seats when they see your stuff, or maybe you do. I don't know. But you probably don't forget those things. So the deeper that we can attach a deep emotion to our brand, to our product, to our story, to our customers, the more likely they are to remember it. Remember when I asked you about what cereal you buy? So the last time I went to buy cereal, and I was standing there feeling kind of funky and kind of bummed out, and I started thinking about the cereal that I ate as a kid. And I started thinking about Cheerios. And right next to the Cheerios was the brand, the generic brand. And it's like a couple bucks cheaper, which, you know how expensive dry cereal is here. I mean, it's insane. So, okay, do I buy the generic brand? It's probably just as good, 5%, 5%, 5%. Do I buy the Cheerios, the same ones I had as a kid, 95, 95, 95? Yeah, these are probably just as good. I'll take these. 95%. Quick, fast, passionate. What was happening there? It had nothing to do with the quality of the product. It had nothing to do with even the pricing. Why did I pick it? Because I was triggered from emotions from when I was a kid. Because Cheerios has made themselves part of my life since I was a child. And they continue to do that with my nieces and my nephews and every other kid I've ever known. I cannot get away from that. I see myself eating Cheerios. I do not see myself eating the little round circles. It just doesn't happen for me like that. That's the story that I tell myself. That's the power of the emotion that we can create for ourselves. Here's a question I have for you about storytelling. When you look at your website, or maybe the last couple pieces of your social media posts, I want you to go back and I want you to count the number of us's and we's, we do this is who we are, versus the number of you's. This is how this works for you. You're going to have this experience. I want you to count them out. If the us's and we's dominate, you're not storytelling. You're not making it about me. Okay? You're not engaging the customer the way you want to engage the customer. And social media is easily the most accessible place for you to do that. I want to tell you one more story that illustrates this. I consider myself a good cook. Now remember, how I see myself as a cook has nothing to do with the reality. If you ask my husband, he might tell you something different. But I see myself as a good cook. So a couple of months ago, I had to go buy another cheese grater. I had used my cheese grater up. And, I mean, cheese grater is a cheese grater, right? I mean, how special can a stinking cheese grater be? So I went onto Amazon and started looking at reviews, and I see one that's a KitchenAid. And I have some other KitchenAid appliances, and I think that they're pretty sturdy. But I also happen to think that they're useful, they're good for people who do a lot of cooking. I think they hold up really well. So I'm a good cook, it's a good product, it's a good brand. And there's another cheese grater, looks exactly the same, looks like it has all the features and benefits to it. I mean, can I just say it's a cheese grater, people? I mean, I spent way too much time looking at these cheese graters. At the end of the day, I bought a cheese grater that was $5 more expensive. Why? Because I think I'm a good cook, and good cooks deserve the very best cheese grater that there is, obviously. So the thing I want you to remember is, KitchenAid's been telling me that story ever since I started cooking. Okay? It took a while for that story to sink in. It took a while for me to start to believe I was a good cook too, but that's a different story. And I want you to understand that when you're using captivation motivations and you're doing storytelling, sometimes the reaction is not always immediate. You have to work it a little bit. You have to allow it to sink in. You have to allow people to express themselves, and you have to allow them to see themselves like that multiple times. Okay? Don't just do it once and say, oh, it didn't work. Nobody clicked. I don't know why it's not working. Give it a little chance. Give it a little time to sink in. Cheerios and KitchenAid have been part of my life for just a really long time. You want to use storytelling if you're trying to curate brand loyalty or you want to charge higher prices. Those two examples I just gave you are great examples. You want to use those two things if those are your circumstances. Maybe they're not, but let me show you a couple of examples. This is a website. They sell advertising on their website, and they also sell products, okay? So they've clearly defined exactly who this website is for. I grabbed this picture off their Facebook page, but they've clearly defined who this website is for. The person who sees themselves at the kitchen thinks that they love food, they eat it with abandon, they eat it with gusto, they cannot wait till they get their next meal. So when these people put up a picture of a spoon in a jar, what's the story? The best way to use every last scrap of jam from the jam jar. Who does that? People who love food. The product is like in the background. The product is not the story. The way we eat food is the story. The way we see how we eat our next meal is the story. So they're so keyed in to exactly who their customer is that they know that they can put the product in the background and inspire the person. Now, I'm thinking to myself when I see this, yeah, I want the last bit of the jam. I think I need that. I can't even barely, by the way, I didn't cut that off. That's cut off in the image itself. But I'm already thinking, I think I need that spoon. I mean, I don't even know what's so special about that spoon. But I'm thinking, I like jam. I like to get all my jam. I think I must need that spoon because that's who I am. This is another great example. It's a small jeweler, and they make affordable jewelry with high quality products. That's their benefits pitch. Okay? It just wasn't taking off, and they couldn't quite figure out why. So they started. They went all the way down the line with this story. They did videos. They actually did create a story. But this guy who, you know this guy, right? I mean, you know exactly who this guy is. This guy likes to wear jewelry. This guy drinks scotch. You can't see it. This guy smokes cigars. This guy's young. He's hip. He's cool. This guy, even if you don't know this guy knows who this guy is. Or this guy who wants to be this guy knows who this guy is. Make a statement, change the game. Not about the jewelry. It's about the life. And if you notice, he has a ring on, but it's really not the key picture. It's really not, what do you look at when you see this? You see this guy, he's happy, he's smiling, he's obviously celebrating, he's in full command of his scotch. He's really, the story is about the kind of life this person lives. So now I know, if I'm going to be that guy, which I'm not, but if I'm going to be that guy, I'm going to Proclamation Jewelry. And their whole Facebook page is filled with similar images, not just of this guy, but of that guy, if you know what I mean. The price point on this does happen to be lower, so they're using younger people. They want to attract younger people. You could take the same guy and make him 60 if you wanted to charge higher prices, right? Because it's really not about the age, actually, in this. It's about the lifestyle in this picture. So the next one that we're going to talk about is, it's a little hard to read, is about what I call bounty and battering. Really, it's the power of rewards. If you have a pet or you have kids, you know all about the power of rewards and punishment. In marketing, I strongly suggest that we focus on the rewards portion. Punishment doesn't tend to go over real well in marketing. But again, the thing to remember about rewards is, just kind of leading up to everything that we've talked about today, it's not really necessarily, we always default to reward must be a coupon, or it must be a prize, or it must be something with perceived value. Perceived value is not necessarily something that costs you a lot of money. Recognition, status, and experiences are actually the things that the 95% of the brain value most. The reason that they value them the most is recognition. It's about me. Status. It's about me. Experiences. Oh, again. It's about me. Experiences are particularly interesting because the 95% of the brain values them more than anything else. And part of the reason for that is the more time that we spend on or with something, the more than 95% of the brain values it. So when you start to think about reasons or ways that you can give people unique experiences, it doesn't have to do anything with your brand if you don't want it to. I mean, it would be nice, but it doesn't really have to. The point is that you want people to have an emotional experience that they tie to your brand in some way, shape, or form. Again, it doesn't have to be a trip. It doesn't have to be a dinner, a free dinner. The experience can come right off your social media page. That in and of itself is its own reward, okay? So the thing to understand about the other thing to understand about rewards, especially in social media, is that first we have to sort of set an expectation that rewards are going to be given. Then we give some rewards on a fairly consistent basis. Then we make them inconsistent. But now a habit's been created. It's just like training a puppy. You know, the first time I ask my dog to sit, she doesn't sit. I give her a treat. I make her sit. She sits. I give her a treat every time. She sits. She sits. She sits. I never give her a treat anymore. She still sits. You can do that same kind of thing in social media, all right? And again, the rewards, they could be comments, the recognition kind of things. The rewards could be, you know, special access to special events. People love that, especially in social media. So it could be any number of things that you want to use as a reward, okay? But the thing I want you to remember is it just has to be valuable to your potential customer. So if it's valuable to you, it may not be valuable to them. I'll give you another example. I had a client a bunch of years ago. They were launching a brand new product. It was targeted towards moms who wanted to make sure that their kids were safe on Facebook. So they had all these, this was out of Silicon Valley, they had all these techie guys who had done all this work, and it was the greatest product on the face of the planet, and they got written up in TechCrunch and Mashable, and very exciting stuff. Seriously, very exciting stuff. Well-funded. Their CMO is a well-known, brilliant man. They just couldn't figure out why it was that all these technical people and all these security experts that they were bringing online and doing testimonials with and showcasing all over the place weren't responding to, the moms just weren't digging it. You know what the moms were saying? The moms were saying, I don't need you to tell me what my kids are doing on Facebook. I got it handled. I'm the mom. I can go on their page and see what's happening. I don't need your shenanigans right here. You're telling me I don't know what I'm doing? Right off the bat, they're not identifying correctly with the mom. More importantly, when we realize that we're not identifying correctly with the mom, we don't give any moms a chance to experience the product. We don't go out and say, Mom, hold on. Come on in. Take a look at it. We don't get them to do a deep dive. We don't get them to experience the things that we're telling them that they're missing. Had we done that, I think the product would have taken off. As it was, it limped along. It eventually got sold. It's sort of another one of those, it's not really a failure, but it's certainly not going to be the next Facebook or Instagram. So, you know, it was a great product. It really was. Great features, great benefits, really reasonable pricing, bad marketing. Big bummer. Again, had we been recognizing with rewards or through the tribal captivation motivations who the actual client was, I think we would have done a better job at it. It's just amazing to me that you can have a situation like that where a lot of really smart people are working on it and we all missed it. I look at it in retrospect and it's just so clear. But it wasn't very clear at that time. So we have to be really careful when we're thinking about using rewards and who and what's valuable to whom. Let's see. I like this example of a reward. This is a product. I love the way they put this. It's a vitamin product for those who drink. What I think they mean is it cures hangovers. Okay, that's what I think they mean. But it's supposed to be a product geared towards young people. And here you can tap to win a free sample. Now, this is a great example of using rewards combined with that experience. So one other thing that we're going to talk about in just a minute is once we've had something, really hate to give it up. So giving away free samples is a really great tool. What I really wish they would have done in this, though, is gone back to taking a look at who's the person that's using this product? What kind of life are they leading? What's missing in this? It's a big picture of a bottle. Woo! You know? I mean, in a pretty place. I mean, you know, it's sort of a bummer. So if you would have taken that guy that we looked at in the jewelry ad and combined it with, you're going to need this tomorrow, that would have been a little bit more compelling in my opinion. But I do love that they're giving this away. They tap to like our Instagram account and, you, Das, Dig, Win, email us and we'll send you your free goodie. And they do this every Friday. They're creating a habit. People are coming to them every Friday. They're getting more and more likes. So I think they're doing, it's a nice job. I just think the image could have been, a little more triggered. So they run them weekly, and it's a fun habit for them. This is another example of recognition. This is a woman, she's a solopreneur out of Alaska. And she has 249,000 Facebook fans. And she's a carpenter, and she creates these plans for do-it-yourself people to utilize in their own homes. This is something the people who bought one of her plans created. So she puts this up, she puts one of these up almost every day. So people send her their pictures, and she puts it, so we were talking about content. She's not creating this content. Her customers are creating this content. It's customer-generated content. Why do they care? Why do they send it to her? Because they want to get recognized, because she does this every day. They're showing off their hard work. She knows exactly who the customer is. She knows exactly who's going to be viewing this. And she gets 569 people to like a trash can. I mean, it's pretty impressive, I think. Okay. The last piece on this is our instincts. I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. So the 95% is really all about our instincts. We have three primary instincts. One is fear. We're probably all aware of that one. Fear really works in a couple of different ways. One is fear of illness and death, which we're probably all aware of. Now, a lot of people say, how will I ever use that in marketing? On my very last slide, I'll give you an example. The other is something I just referenced a few minutes ago, fear of missing out, the fear of loss. We hate it when we think that we're missing out on something. Great example of this. When was the last time you went to buy a car? Think about the last time you went to buy a car. Yeah, I know. I love the car buying experience too. When you go to buy a car, when you do the test drive, is it almost always fully loaded? Yes. Car dealers, they totally get the instincts. They are so smart. And the reason for that is that you drive the car that's fully loaded. You go down and you sit with the guy and you say, okay, I'm going to buy this car. And when you start taking things out of the model that you drove, remember all the little bells and whistles that it kept having? Make sure you press this. This is really, this sunroof is really, really awesome. You got to try it out. The reason for that is that when you go to try and take items away, your 95% is kicking in full gear. You don't want to give up. You probably give up some things, but you are not going to want to give up as many things as if you had driven the stripped down model and been asked to add the features back in. This is your 95% at work. Car dealerships are brilliant at it. It's awesome. So think to yourself about the way that you present your products. What is the thing that people would be missing out on if they didn't have your product? Is it a lifestyle? Is it an experience? Is it security? Is it safety? What are they going to be missing? What are they going to be losing when they don't get to have your product close at hand? The next piece is control. We all know that we like to have control of the situation. Some of us maybe a little bit more than others. But control really factors in a couple of different ways. We like to have control. 95% likes to have control but doesn't like to be overwhelmed by choices, right? You probably already know that if you're going to give people a choice to do something, you shouldn't give them more than 3 choices. The reason for that is that the choice, when we have more than 3 choices, the choice the 95% of the brain makes is to not make a choice. That's an actual choice, too, to walk away from making a choice. So the thing to understand about this is you want to give people an opportunity to feel in control, but you want to not overwhelm them with their choices. That's another reason why car dealerships put all their options into packages, right? There's like a bazillion different packages to choose from, or a bazillion different options to choose from, but they package them. So we like having control, but we don't like to be overwhelmed by the control. Example of this, there was a study a couple of years ago. They did taste testing for jams. It's funny how jam works its way into my life all the time. Anyway, they did the taste testing on jams at a gourmet market. And in one control group, they put out 26 different types of jams. In the other control group, they put out 6 different types of jams. The group that had the 26 different types of jams had a lot more people come to it. But those people were 30 times less likely to buy than the people that came to the table with only 6 choices. So if you're going to send a staff person out to go do something like this, would you rather have more people who don't buy or fewer people but more of them do buy? That's the power of the control, okay? And of course, the other piece of our instincts is pleasure. You're probably familiar with the dopamine hormone. You've probably heard that it's a pleasure hormone. Well, and you probably know that food and sex, they trigger our dopamine hormone. Did you know that the other 95% also gets a dopamine hit from seeking information? How many of you have ever spent a couple of hours doing a Google search? Yes, me too. You just go straight in there, right? It's that you're actually getting a dopamine trigger, the same as if you were eating something yummy like the cupcake. The same as if it's the same trigger, it's the same hormone that you get triggered, that cocaine triggers. That's how powerful that hormone is, okay? So you really want to think about exactly how it is that you can utilize that seeking mechanism in your social media. Is it a guessing game? Is it a hide and seek somewhere in your store? That actually triggers people to have a surge of happy feeling. I like happy feeling. So think about how you can use the pleasure principle. I mean, obviously food and sex are great, but the pleasure principle is also triggered by that seeking mechanism. That's another reason why, if you're thinking about your websites or things like that, you don't want to make all the information totally available right up front. You want them to go just a little bit, get a little bit of taste, and go into the next phase. Little bit of taste and go on the next phase. Enough of a taste to keep them interested in wanting to know more, but not so much that it's all at once and that they don't get to trigger that dopamine piece. All right? One of the fears of missing out triggers is really curiosity. And I think curiosity is one of the easiest things to trigger in social media. I mean, curiosity is really just asking someone, why? What? How? This company called Diamond Candles, their candles themselves are great triggers of curiosity. After you get finished burning through the candle, there's a ring at the bottom of it valued between, I think, $10 and $5,000. I know, right? Can you imagine how many candles you're selling to be putting a $5,000 ring in there? But anyway, that product itself triggers that curiosity dopamine piece, okay? But then in their marketing, they say, here's our new scents, top secret. Oh, I'm kind of curious. What is it? 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 When are you going to announce it? I want to know. Just this simple picture right here. This is just about curiosity. It's just a curiosity trigger. Now I can't forget. When are they going to come out with those new fragrances? I wanted to also show you this picture of Chris Delgrand, who has 47,000 Twitter followers. He is a B2B merchant processing, credit card processing merchant seller. Am I saying that right? Anyway, it's not a particularly exciting product, and it's pretty much a commodity. There's a lot of people who do it. So Chris Delgrand does not talk about credit card processing in his Twitter feed. Chris Delgrand talks about things that are going to inspire and engage people just in their lives. And it's working for him. In this particular picture, he's talking about a young man who he personally thinks it's a Down syndrome man, personally thinks is amazing. It's a little bit hard not to look at that picture and be a little bit inspired. This is a B2B guy. Everybody says you can't use social media or B2B in social media, but this guy has said, that's fine, I'm just going to go ahead and take my B2B customers and just go ahead and talk to them as people. I'm going to go ahead and assume that the person on the other end of the line has emotions, interests, ideas, concepts, fears, all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to get 47,000 followers in doing so. It's pretty impressive in a B2B environment. Okay, this is you're going to just love this one. This is a great illustration of fear. This video was created for with $500.
Halitophobia, the irrational fear of bad breath. I'm a halitophobic. I'm not so much afraid of me having bad breath. I'm afraid of other people having bad breath. As in, hey buddy, your breath smells like crap. Maybe you should develop a case of halitophobia. Now I know what you're asking. How do we know if we have bad breath? You use this. You use a spoon. Now I know what you're thinking. A spoon, you eat with a spoon, you play spoons. You spoon your girlfriend. You take the spoon, forward. You take the spoon and you stick it at the back of your tongue and gently scrape. Let it dry and take a whiff. If it stinks, your breath stinks. And if your breath stinks, this is the only kind of spooning you're going to be getting. The smart viewer out there will know, to check your bad breath, you notice that we checked our tongue. 90% of bad breath comes from bacteria and residue on the tongue. On your tongue. Now, your mom doesn't sound so stupid for telling you to brush your tongue. Now, does she? Tongues are like sponges, soaking up all that bacteria. Toothbrushes are meant to clean the smooth surfaces of your teeth, not your tongue. And the tongue scraper? You remember the sponge, right? The tongue scraper just goes over the top of your tongue. This ain't gonna work. And mouthwash? This is like trying to clean your carpet with a hose. You're just watering down the problem. And then there's the option that actually works. This, the Aura Brush. The soft bristles feel great on your tongue. You just go back and forth a few times, then go all the way back, pull it forward, and see what comes off. The cure to bad breath. You can use this longer than your toothbrush. Use it in the morning, eliminate morning breath, fresh breath all day, and then use it at night, right before bed. You know what I'm talking about, huh? So do you and me and the rest of mankind a favor, get one of these. And your Uncle Steve, the one who looks like he's got a thick coat of fur on his tongue, get him one too. Put it in his Christmas stocking. He'll thank you for it later. His wife will, the kids will, everybody will be happier, trust me. Get your first Aura Brush free at aurabrush.com/free.
So do you see how we talked about, we triggered fear. We all have fear of bad breath. We triggered fear right off the bat. We made it all about the customer. We made it all about me, right? We triggered all these emotions, and then we went into the benefits, and then we went into the features, and then we said, and don't forget, one more time, it's about you. This is a $500 YouTube video put on by a guy who had been struggling for years to get this product to take off. He tried. I mean, just like so many people, he just kept trying, and this is the thing that hit. But this is the reason it hit. It's 100% at the 95% of the brain. He didn't even ask the 5% to engage until the very last stage. And there you have it. That is exactly how you might use fear or captivation motivations, any of them, in any of your marketing today. So I remember I told you, gosh, I had a little translation problems there. Remember I told you that we didn't get to cover all of the captivation motivations today. If you'd like to get an ebook that I did on all 7 of them, you can go here and it'll just auto-deliver to your email. I'm also going to be doing a training class later this winter. It'll probably be online. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper in identifying the customer, really using the system of using captivation motivations. And I'll give you VIP access to that too if you buy the ebook. So that's the end of my storytelling today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, I want to take this time to thank Tara. I've known Tara for 3 years now, and she is one of the founders of the Social Media Marketing Organization. She was president of it several times. She's been very influential in training and educating people who are professionals in the marketing field, such as myself, on social media. She's a very busy person, and but she would be a great person that if you ever needed to get some consulting with, and she'll help you understand the marketing piece of social media, which very few people know as much as Tara. So on behalf of Hawaiian Telcom, we thank you so much for making the seminar, and she will be available for Q&A after the seminar, as well as visiting our booth at the Expo. Thank you again for coming today. I do want to remind you that if you have not validated your parking, we would like to do that for you at the back of the room. And have a wonderful day, and please visit us at our booth. We have several things there that we'd like to talk to you about and share with you. Have a good day.